Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another EPC Season 1 post-week update. This should be uploaded sometime during the weekend. Then we'll get back to the regular scheduled program of uploading every Tuesday or Wednesday. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get right into why you see things the way they are on screen. So the first match that was done was, why did that happen? My apologies. Was that Boston Red Bulls faced the Edmonton S Cavaliers. That was the first match that was completed. That ended up in a 3-0 victory, which in all accordance should have been a 5-0 or a 4-0. Theo, who is coach of the Edmonton S Cavaliers, had low enough Pokemon where I think on a protect play he could have gone into his Kieran Black, which I'm pretty sure was Scarfed, and then just clicked Ice Beam and won the game from there. I'm not entirely sure what the spreads were, why he didn't do that, but if he would have done that, he would have ended off the match 5-0 and would have jumped up to second in standings. And I'll talk about the standings when we're done with all the matches. Next, you have the Chicago Infernape versus the Philadelphia Pharaohs. And this match was real plain and simple. Philadelphia brought the same 6 Pokemon that he did last week. Leo prepped accordingly, and as typical weather and as typical webs, it was basically, once again, just Superior. Superior is by far leading every single other Pokemon. Superior picked up, I think, another 4 or 5 kills this week. Ended up in a 5-0. You don't set up webs on a team with Superior because you're just asking to get reverse swept. He set up webs. Once certain Pokemon were low, Superior was literally free to come in and just click various moves. I think it was Hidden Power Fire the thing had. So it had Hidden Power Fire, it had Z Devastating Drake, which is Z Dragon Pulse, Giga Drain for recovery, and obviously Leaf Storm. And the combination of those moves just obliterated, and as well as getting the +1 speed, it just cleaned house. Not really much more to say. Leo is pretty far ahead. Next, you have the Independent Registeels and the Parramatta Poplio. This was a fairly straightforward match, with bulky Pokemon picking up a few kills here and there, and expert play on Shadow's part, just swapping out, doing perfect Clark stuff, and ultimately, Parramatta didn't make too many good reads, and once again, they brought a lot of the same Pokemon. And the combination of Coco Lucha mixed with the best healer in the game being that pesky Audino, there was quite literally nothing that he could do. And that ends up being our first 6-0 in all of the leagues so far. There have been 3 5-0s and now a 6-0. So people are going to have to really prep for Coco Lucha, and the fact he brought a lot of the same Pokemon, but that's for a reason. You just got to prepare well and prepare to get rid of that Audino, because if you don't get rid of that Audino, he's just going to keep clericking his 2 sweepers over and over again. So be well prepared for that. Next, we have the Maine Milotic versus the Toronto Staraptors. This match ended up in a 2-0, bumping Pokecrafter up to a 0, because he was minus, it might have been -1. Yeah, it's -1, so it's not quite on there, quite right on there, but that was a 2-0, I believe, unless I wrote down the wrong stats. So he jumps up to a -1 differential from a -3. expert play on his part. He made a couple of misplays here and there, but ultimately, I think his prep outdid Tony's prep, and just he got Pokemon down to a certain point that Raikou could just come in and clutch the game out. And I'm surprised Pharaoh Seed actually put in a lot of work, because had he not had the Pharaoh Seed, the Raikou would have probably died. But he played really well once he was down to just those 2 Mons, and it was basically just, hey, you can't touch me, the game. Next, you have your 2 forfeits, the St. James Slowbros and the Seattle Marinis. Neither of them contacted me, but by virtue of the St. James Slowbro being generally more active than the Seattle Marini, St. James Slowbro got a 1-0 victory, bumping them from a -2 to a -1, which I didn't put down there, sorry. It's a -1. So that's how the Midnight Conference boils down. The Seattle Marini gets 1 loss, so they drop from -5 to -6. And then you have the just an acknowledged forfeiture due to travel and stuff. The Virginia Scizors unfortunately could not make a time meet with their opponents, the Vancouver Kyogre, and so traditional forfeiture rules apply. So Vancouver gets the 3-0 win, and Virginia gets the 3-0 loss, dropping Virginia down from +2 to -1, and bumping Vancouver up from a +3 to a +6. So, the reason the Midnight Conference is a little wonky, and I'll explain a little bit. The Midday Conference didn't have to worry about this just because of the way their matches played out, and the way things happened for the most part in terms of who won and who lost. The Midnight Conference is, I think, by far the most competitive conference, with Independent being obviously the clear favorite because they have Coco Lucha and because they have outstanding clerical support. That's going to be really, really annoying to deal with. Philadelphia, even though they lost by quite a big margin and went to -4 from their, what was it, +1, I believe? Yeah, it had to be +1. Yeah, they were +1 because they beat Boston in a 1-0 match. So they went down to -4, but they still beat Boston. Their records are even with them having the notch both in division matches and the fact that they beat Boston. So even though Boston has a higher differential, in order for differential to override division win-loss, you have to be winning by more than a game. So right now, Philadelphia could 6-0, and Boston, they're technically, Philadelphia is like a game and a half out in technicality, because your average match is a 2-0 to a 3-0, somewhere in there. So Boston literally only needs to lose one match 3-0, and Philadelphia to win a match 3-0, and they come right back together in that terms. Which is why Philadelphia is ahead. Not only because Philadelphia beat Boston last week, but because their division win-loss is higher. The reason Virginia is below Boston is purely based off of differential. They have the knock in division win, but their differential is enough, and by virtue of them having to forfeit, that's why Virginia jumps down the list so far. I typically penalize those who forfeit over those who do not forfeit. And I need to actually update because Seattle and Parramatta both lost their matches. So, interestingly enough, Midnight appears to be the most competitive division whereas midday, it's pretty much your top 3 / top 2. Midday, hopefully someone here soon can pick up a win and really separate themselves from that bottom. Whereas midnight, it's just independent, and then everyone else is kind of even. And this division setup was based off of, and it was before the draft and before I revealed who faced who. Divisions were set up before the draft, and then I revealed the schedule. I made the schedule before the draft and revealed the schedule after the draft. So it's not a matter of counter teaming. It's maybe within division a little bit, but more so than anything, people just planned their team to make it the best possible team that they could. At least that's what I believe. So the reason tonight is a little wonky. That's why if Philadelphia wins next week and Boston loses or wins in a close game, then it'll make more sense why Philadelphia is above Boston. But if Philadelphia loses and Boston wins next week, Boston will jump them in conference seeding. So we'll see. I don't remember if Boston faced Philadelphia. Regardless, I forgot to do so in the last week's video. But week 3 will pit Virginia versus the Virginia Scissors versus the Maine Milotics, the Chicago Infernapes versus the Edmonton S Cavaliers, the Independent Reggie Steels versus the Philadelphia Firo, the Seattle Marini versus the Vancouver Kyogre, the Boston Red Bulls versus the St. James Slowbros, and the Toronto Staraptor versus the Parramatta Poplio. So that's what week 3 is looking like. There will be a 1-week break after week 5. And there you see the week 2, it had the little triangle. It's just to notify why those scores at that. So hopefully the coaches can get their matches in. I know it's summer, but you do have like a week to get your matches done. I know people are waiting a little bit to see matches get finished. But yeah, it's interesting. A lot of coaches this week brought a lot of the same Pokemon. I was very vague this week just because I unfortunately didn't have time to write notes down. But for the real standout matches, I obviously put notes down, just like the Chicago and the Independent. And then the Boston match, which clearly could have been a 5-0 or a 4-0 had they played a little smarter. But yeah, so that's gonna do it. I know it's a little wonky in the Midnight Conference, but like I said, Philadelphia has who's their opponent? They have a tough opponent in Independent, and if they don't prep well, Independent is just gonna run through them. Boston has a tough match against the Slowbros, but I foresee Boston losing by a closer margin. If they lose, then Philadelphia winning by a larger margin if they beat Independent, which based on their team and based on the play that I'm seeing Independent put into his work, into not only his prep, but the way he handles himself in battle, I do not foresee them winning. I foresee maybe a 3-0 win in the favor of Independent, just because webs and sand is pretty hard to deal with in terms of the core that Independent is bringing. So we'll have to see what happens. I foresee, in terms of division, really the biggest match to look for is Virginia versus Maine, because that's kind of a toss-up. And then Chicago versus Edmonton, those are two of the top teams on the other side of the bracket, squaring off against one another. And then Toronto and Parramatta, because both of them, they have an opportunity to distance themselves from the bottom half of the latter. So yeah, without any further ado, this video has been a little longer than I anticipated, but I wanted to give a little more in-depth discussion due to the fact that I didn't really write the best notes down this week. So yeah, without any further ado, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you're hyped for some EPC Season 1 content, be sure to smack that like button down below. And this is Major. I will see you later. Goodbye.